What is up, guys? Welcome to Jets, Mets and Regrets. I'm Jason. We're here with Johnny today. Johnny, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited for this episode. It's going to be a fun one.
So we got a fun episode today planned, guys. A little bit different. So going back to when me and Rick in one of our first episodes ever doing top five Mets and Jets players. Me and Johnny taking a page from that, doing worst five Jets and Mets moments combined. So going to be really, really fun. What we're doing is we're going to do it draft style. It's going to be snaking. So John's actually going to have the first overall pick.
1-1. Let's go. Jason graced me with the first overall pick. It's going to be
I wanted him to go
pressure.
first. I like having two in a row right off the bat. So John will go first. I'll have the next two. Then he'll have the next two until we finish up. So John, with the first overall pick in the Jets and Mets history draft for worst moments, what are we taking here?
Okay, so I think that the worst moment of my life watching either the Jets or the Mets was World Series 2015 Game 5.
Go on.
When we say moments, like there were so many moments, but specifically, that top of the ninth inning, they had a 2-0 lead. Harvey was absolutely dishing it all game long. It was absolutely electric. I was there in the stadium. I think you were there too, right? Or no, Steve was there.
I was not there. Steven was there. Yeah.
Okay,
I was
yeah.
watching.
Yeah, so that it was like Harvey, and the whole stadium was chanting Harvey, Harvey. They all wanted him to come out, and then he gets the double off of Hosmer hits the double off of him to start the inning, and then Duda, when he's trying to steal home, Duda just throws the ball away, and it was just one of the most miserable moments of my entire life, and it was just really painful. I mean, and then they lost the game. They couldn't even finish it in the 10th or something like that. The game went on to the 12th inning. It was just so miserable. It was a Sunday night. I had a final the next day. I was still in college. I had a final the next day I had to study for. It was just, you really felt that the Mets, even though down 3-1 in the series, you really felt like they were gonna come back and win the series, especially in that game. But whatever. That's my first pick. World Series 2015, Game 5. Blowing it. Thanks, Lucas Duda. Thanks for nothing.
Hey, that's a great first pick. I mean, I remember watching in the basement of my parents' house, and you thought there was a shot. They were down 3-1 in the series, but I mean, they just swept the Cubs 4-0, right? Arguably the favorite to get in that year. So that was a devastating game, and probably more so that you were there.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry,
the
man.
whole stadium was just rocking all game. Like I said, Harvey was absolutely lights out. They couldn't hit him all game long, and the defense screwed him in the end. It was so bad. It was so bad.
No, that's a good one. I'm gonna go next. So
Okay.
in the first round, second pick overall in the Jets and Mets, worst fantasy or not worst fantasy, worst moment draft.
Yeah.
I am taking Game 7, 2006
Okay.
NLCS.
Off the board. Okay.
That was one of my first exposures to Mets heartbreak. I probably started becoming a fan in 2000, 2001. So, but in 2000, I don't think it was really heartbreak. It was kind of me figuring out I was a Met fan somehow. And then they sucked, right? In 01, 02, 03, 04, just horrible. 05, finally started spending money again, had some homegrown talent in Wright and Reyes. So things were looking up. But yeah, just so invested in 2006. I mean, they go for Beltran, right, in 05. In 2006, they bring on Delgado. You have Paul Duca, Wright, Reyes. I mean, the lineup is just stacked.
It really was. So much power.
Yeah, with unbelievable players. You have Pedro Martinez, you have Billy Wagner, Tom Glavine, El Duque. You just have all this star power, man. It kind of reminds me of the Mets now. And fast forward to Game 7, and the Mets weren't looking too good. I mean,
No.
they were supposed to be the favorite by far against St. Louis, and it went to a Game 7. And the series was back and forth. A lot of injuries in the roster, obviously relying on Oliver Perez and guys like John Maine and players like that. But, man, Yadier Molina's home run in the ninth to go ahead. And you just knew, man, you know, line up with Delgado and Beltran and Reyes and Wright. Only one run in the first 8 innings. You just knew. It was going to be done. And of course, Beltran had a shot and looked at strike three against Wainwright, and the rest is history. But that was one of the most devastating moments. I was so invested that year. I think when we think of like invested years, that's the top two
Yeah,
investment year of me and the Mets,
I
probably.
agree. I feel like I really felt like the Mets were always going to win it that year. You know, like I remember seeing him strike out on strike three and almost not even believing my eyes. You know what I mean? Like I was like, how could this be? How could they not have won? You know? Yeah, that's kind of how I felt too. Seeing that, it just almost didn't feel real.
So yeah, I mean, obviously as a Met fan, we share it. Uh, and then for me, I'm gonna go 2010 season AFC Championship game
Okay,
against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
got it. Okay.
Uh, I mean, it was just tough coming off. I won't get too much into it, but off of the 2009 AFC Championship game, the Jets were back, right? Going into 2010, they made the playoffs the previous year, almost got to the Super Bowl. You had Rex Ryan, who was doing good, Sanchez, a second-year quarterback. We finally found the one potentially. You just love that team, right? Amazing defenses with Revis and Cromartie and Bart Scott and the Can't Wait. And, leading up to that moment, beating the Patriots, like that was one of probably the Jets' best moments, right? If we were to do an episode on that.
Their last greatest moment, their last playoff
Yeah,
win.
seriously, their last greatest moment. And the defense is your bread and butter the last couple of years, but all year, right? You have a dominant defense. You're one of the best in the leagues. Rex Ryan has his fingerprint all over it. You love it as a Jet fan. It's ground and pound. It's our identity. Play amazing defense, but we went down 24-0 right away in the second quarter, and you just knew
Yeah, I mean,
that
exactly.
there was something off, and it was almost like they were riding that high against New England, right? And they couldn't. That was the height of the hype.
Yeah, and they even came back in the second half. You know, they crawled back and they only lost the game by what was the final score? 23-19 or something like that. I mean, it was
Yeah, so they were able to put a field goal on the board before halftime, and then and they made a run. And I'm pretty sure Sanchez was driving on the last drive, and they just couldn't convert. And it was just tears in a row, and it was like, hey, we still have a good team. And obviously, like you said, it was the last good moment. But at the time, it was still demoralizing. Like, hey, what? I guess we'll get better next year, But that 2 years in a row, so that was a tough one, Johnny. That was a tough one.
I agree. All right, I'm next. I think this might be a little bit of a sleeper pick. I think I might be able to get this in a later round, but I'm going to go with it anyway because it truly did break my heart. And that's going to be 2016 wild card game against the San Francisco Giants when Connor Gillespie hit a 3-run home run off of Jeurys Familia. I mean, that game was just absolutely incredible. Noah Syndergaard and Madison Bumgarner. I mean, you talk about pitcher duel in the majors. That was it. I mean, nobody on either team could buy a hit off of the other pitcher. They were just absolutely spectacular. Unfortunately, it just so happened that Syndergaard could only go 7 scoreless. And Madison Bumgarner, after Gillespie hit that 3-run home run in the top of the 9th, then he comes back in for the complete game shutout. And it was just, gave up 4 hits against the Mets in 2016. The Mets had just came back off of the World Series that year. So, you kind of were hoping that they were going to ride that momentum. And they fortunately made the wild card game, and they were able to have a home field game for the wild card game. And you had your guy on the mound. You had Noah Syndergaard on the mound at home.
Yep.
But, Madison Bumgarner, he has that playoff reputation, maybe not the greatest of all time in the regular season, but maybe one of the greatest of all time in the playoffs, right? And over the course of his history, over his career. So that when Gillespie hit that home run, it just felt like the whole air just went out of the building. And, you kind of knew that Madison Bumgarner was going to put him down 1-2-3 in the
And I would say even to this day, the Mets still can't hit amazing pitchers. Like they have a history of just not being able to hit the best of the best. But obviously they're the best of the best, right? You don't usually get to a Scherzer in the playoffs. You don't usually get to a Garrett Cole in the playoffs. But for whatever reason it is, sometimes teams do though, right? Every once in a while. The Mets are never that once in a while against pitchers like that, ever.
Yep. I agree.
But yeah, that was tough, especially after that World Series appearance. So
Yeah, again, like it was a great game. There was that great play, Granderson with that, robbing of that extra base hit. I think it was the seventh inning. It was a really fun game. It was just unfortunate that the Mets couldn't pull it out. They couldn't hit, like you said, couldn't hit great pitching. All right, okay, all right. What's my next pick? All right, I am going to go 2015 Week 17 loss to the Bills.
Oh, that's a good one. That was on my list. That was on my list.
Yep, that one. I mean, the Jets, after, like we just talked about, 2011, they had that run and they didn't make it back. Couple years later, 4 years later, that's kind of a long time. You want to get back to the playoffs. They brought in Fitzpatrick, and he had one of the best years that any Jets quarterback in the history of their franchise has ever had.
Unbelievable.
It was absolutely incredible that this guy was the one who's going to do it, and they had that awesome receiving core of Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall, and you just really felt like it would be a really productive year. I mean, they had a lot of really exciting games, but that, like I said, that game against the Bills, I mean, they went down quick in the game, 14-0, and remember, this was coached by Rex Ryan, these Bills. Right, so it was a Rex Ryan revenge game. So, the Jets just needed to win that game, or they needed Pittsburgh to lose. But going into Week 17, you wanna win that game, right? To put yourself into the playoffs on a good note. But they tried coming back, but they just got the defense let up too much, and the Fitzpatrick had, I think, 3 turnovers in the fourth quarter. And it was so heartbreaking to see that they had such a promising season and they threw it all away to the Bills, who at the time were just an absolute terrible team.
Yeah, I mean that was the last time the Jets were good, right? Technically, not the last time in the playoffs, but
yeah, exactly.
So that's definitely heartbreaking for sure.
This is the best they've done since then,
Yeah, and then that wasn't even enough.
Yeah.
But, all right, I'm going to kind of go a back-to-back route here. So I'm going to say to start 2007, New York Mets.
Oh, no.
Collapse against the Philadelphia Phillies.
Okay.
Obviously, one of the biggest collapses. I'd have to look up and see if it's still the biggest collapse in sports history, or at least in Major League Baseball history. But Mets going into September, being up double digits in games, right, over the Phillies.
Yeah.
Like what could go wrong? And again, we're talking about this Mets team, that pretty similar team to 2006, right? That team that made the NLCS.
Yeah, it was the same team.
There were very high hopes that, all right, this team's going to get back next year. Like next year they'll make the World Series, right?
Yep.
And just completely demoralizing to not make it. And I remember, I'm pretty sure if they won, they would have been in that year. And I'm sure Tom Glavine was pitching, and he just had one of the. What's
sorry.
up?
No, sorry. Keep going.
He just had one of the worst games of his entire career. Like literally, I think in the first inning, he just got shelled.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the Mets collapsed. And that's how it ended. And it should have never got to that point, right? It should have never got to that point, but just so demoralizing.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
I mean, he was a good left-handed pitcher. Had a couple of good runs. But they completely blew it. They had one game to win. They couldn't win it against a team that was not, the Marlins, friggin' Marlins. Well, whatever. Yep, that was a bad one. 2007 collapse, horrible.
Absolutely. And then I'm going to piggyback off it, and we're going to do a bang bang. We're going to have the last game of the season in 2008 to say goodbye. And honestly, I could put that in one of my favorite moments as a Met fan.
I have it here right now. Say goodbye. It says say goodbye right there.
Say goodbye. And for those of you who don't know, which I hope you know, unless you're a new Met fan, you might not know some of the older history. It was already 14 years ago. But that was the last game at Shea Stadium. And John, I'll be honest, right? I'll admit on this podcast right now, 14 years ago, I was a lot younger, right? But I definitely cried a little bit. I was a little sad.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that was like the definition of like my Mets hood, and watching games at Shea Stadium. That's where I first went to a game. I don't know if this is too deep into it, but anyway, it was one of the worst moments because like they closed out the stadium, and again, I think it was one of those like if they win, they're in the playoffs. And in 2008, they didn't have as big of a lead, but they had a little bit of a collapse again where they had a lead going into the last couple weeks.
Yeah, they also, for whatever reason, the organization decided that they were going to do the ceremony after the game was over. Like, I feel like you should have done it before the game was over. That way, if they had a horrible collapse where they didn't make the playoffs, not everybody was bummed out of their minds and didn't want to stay anymore. Like, the organization, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of just, like, writes itself.
Oh, for sure. But I think they can't win either way, right? I think they also viewed it as, hey, maybe we're going to have a celebration afterwards. But it just didn't happen.
You're celebrating the stadium and not, I don't know. That's just the way
No, I mean,
either way.
At the end of the day, it was just devastating for me. I mean, back-to-back years coming off one of my most devastating moments in, Game 7, 2006 NLCS, and then just 3 years in a row of just like heartbreak, just horrible heartbreak. And then they were bad for a pretty good amount of time after that until 2015. That was the last time they kind of competed.
Right, I was going to say, from there on out, they were pretty bad.
But yeah, last game at Shea, the end of a 3-year era where they should have won probably multiple World Series or at least made it. Not to discredit how hard it is to get there.
Yep.
And then blowing another lead in back-to-back year. It was just so much that involved in that year. Last game at Shea. Well, yeah, I'm repeating the same thing because I can't stop thinking about it now.
Okay.
But who do you got next, John?
My pick now, right? All right.
You're number 4 for yourself, right?
These next two are my last two.
Yeah, these last two. I got one more after you.
Okay, so there's one. It's going to be Mets. It's going to be 2022. Okay?
Okay.
It's going to be one of the wild card games. I just need to decide which one. I think Game 3 of the 2022 wild card this year against the San Diego Padres at Citi Field. Probably another one of the worst moments as a Mets fan. I mean, you talk about an electric season, 101 wins. They are in first all year long, and they blow it the last week of the season to the Braves. They end up having to play in this wild card series. And Game 1, I was at with Steve, and they just got completely shelled. It was absolutely disgusting. But they came back Game 2 and won, right? DeGrom pitched well in that game, and they had that string of hits I think it was the 7th inning, and they ended up winning the game. I had tickets to Game 3 then. I took my father to the game, and we were so excited. My dad was saying, "Don't worry, they're gonna win tonight." We're gonna remember this moment, taking the train to the game, going to Shea Stadium for their run that they won the World Series in 22. And I mean, you know what this is? That's the number. That's the number of hits that the Mets got in that game.
That is one
hit. One hit in the whole game. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about Chris Bassett and how terrible he was, because he could have pitched 9 innings of one-run baseball, and the Mets still would have lost that game. I mean, talk about a dud. The Mets from the first inning just didn't have a prayer. I mean, you felt like the whole time Joe Musgrove was gonna shut him out, pitch a no-hitter maybe. I mean, I think they got their first hit in the 4th inning or 5th inning or something like that. I mean, just absolutely debilitating. A 101 win team just dying in the playoffs. They couldn't beat the Padres, who, I don't want to take anything away from them. They did end up beating the Dodgers in the next series as well and went on to the championship series. But I think that the Mets were just absolutely head and shoulders a better team than them, and they should have won that game, and they should have been on to the next round and had a deep playoff run, but they didn't do it. So that was definitely one of the worst moments. And all right, so that was my 4th pick. Now my last pick, I slid in there and took it from you, is the butt fumble.
And it wasn't on my list. I know you're surprised about that.
I don't believe you. It
wasn't on my list.
The butt fumble, I asked you before we started recording. I said, "Hey, Jason, name a play in NFL history more embarrassing than the butt fumble? I mean, you could maybe say the play with the Patriots and the Raiders this year was as embarrassing, but I mean the butt fumble. Look at the replay. That's all I have to say. I mean, he doesn't know that it's not a run. There's so much miscommunication between him and the running back, and then he just runs forward because he thinks that's a good idea, and then he just runs into his offensive lineman's rear end, fumbles the ball, and it goes the other way for a touchdown.
Was that Mangold he ran into?
No, he ran into Brandon Moore.
Okay.
What does it make a difference? It's still...
Yeah, I'm just curious.
It's just one of the most absolutely disgusting, most embarrassing moments, probably the most embarrassing moment of being a Mets or a Jets fan. And I know it wasn't as significant as a lot of the other ones on my list, but just in terms of pure embarrassment of being a fan of that team, I mean, forever the Jets will now be the butt fumble team. I mean, that's just kind of who they are, and that's kind of been their legacy since the last time that they were actually good. So until they succeed at all in any sense of the word, they're going to be known as that team until they actually turn it around. So that's it. My list, butt fumble, last pick I draft.
I guess for me, I'd take a butt fumble every season if we could just make the playoffs for once in the past 12 years that we haven't made it. Like I'd take a butt fumble every year just for the playoffs, John. I think that's to the point where I'm at with the butt fumble and with this team. But anyway, with the final pick in the inaugural 2023 5 worst Jet and Met moments, I'm going to go with something, John, that's very fresh in my mind, right? I don't know if you could say this was a wild card, maybe even a dark horse, right? Maybe even one that probably shouldn't be there. I mean, I have a couple other Jet and Met moments that I think you could definitely make an argument for, but John, I'm going to go with the New York Jets against the Los Angeles Rams game in 2020. The game that cost us our perfect record in terms of winless.
Right.
Perfect record.
Right.
That probably cost us Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
All the Jets had to do, John, was just not win a game.
Yep. 17-point underdogs, too.
That's all they had to do, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about the team was a Super Bowl favorite. All they had to do, Johnny, was just to not win. 14th game of the season. They're 0-13 already. They're right there, man.
Yep.
Just 3 more games.
Yep.
Leave it to the Jets to blow 3 more games. They were doing so good at losing. They were the best losers out there with the Jaguars. They were doing something right for once. They were the best in something for once. And they blew it.
Yep. Even that Raiders game. Remember that Raiders game when the Jets were winning with 5 seconds?
Yeah, I remember that one too.
And the Raiders scored, and we were cheering because the Jets.
Dude, they were going all out blitz, man to man.
Yeah.
All out blitz, man to man. You cannot make that up. Greg Williams, thank you.
Yeah, for real.
He got fired after that. He did his job.
Yeah.
He just did what he was told, and he was the scapegoat. But anyway, I'm sneaking that one in there.
Okay. All right. Well, okay, so let's see what we got here. So I got 2015 World Series Game 5. I got 2015 Week 17 loss to the Bills. I got 2016 Connor Gillespie 3-run home run and Madison Bumgarner complete game shutout. And I got 2022 Wild Card Game 3 and the butt fumble. And you got 2006 Carlos Beltran strike 3 looking, 2010 AFC Championship game, 2007 Mets collapse, game 162, 7-run inning against the Marlins, Shea goodbye 2008, and then beating the Los Angeles Rams in 2020. That is your list.
Here we go.
I don't know who had a better list, who had more regrets. We'll see. But I think we both have some pretty good lists. We're able to.
A lot of fans would agree with us. I think a lot of fans would agree with us. But yeah, really fun episode leading up into spring training time and the off season with the Jets. You know, if any news comes up of some more Met signings, I know we just got Tommy Pham, somebody we could talk about in the next episode. We'll definitely have information. But until that, kind of leading up into spring training, we'll try to do some more fun, interactive episodes. So any ideas you guys might have to do, let us know, and we'd be happy to do them. But John, it's time to finish up today and wrap this whole thing up. So we're gonna go regrets real quick. Any regrets you currently have for the week, the weekend, whatever it might be?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not too thrilled on the Tommy Pham signing, so maybe that's a regret. But I mean, you know, fourth outfielder, he doesn't really have to do too much. I just don't think he's that good of a player. But whatever, we'll see. We'll talk about him in future episodes.
There you go. Okay, I like that. For me, I think a regret I have right now is probably going to be watching a bunch of like mock draft videos for the Jets. And I know and it's like almost like a future regret. We're segueing into a regret because I know I'm going to get so hyped as I do always do every year watching these videos and guys in my draft and off season moves and all these things. And I think Steven said it best when I was talking to him the other day. He's like, we always win the off season.
Yep.
We draft well, and we get the good free agent guys like Corey Davis, and we always win the off season. And I know I'm gonna fall in love with the off season, John, and then I'm gonna get my heart broken next year.
Yep.
But I'm already doing it, man. I'm already doing it.
That's what the Jets do. They break our hearts.
They break our hearts. But anyway, I hope you all loved the episode today. I'm Jason. We got Johnny. And we will see you all next week. Thank you for joining Jets, Mets and Regrets.